In this video, we're going to talk about reconcile and data mapping. Well, you know by now that we can import our devices from Slurp'it to Nautobot, and the sole purpose of that is to have those devices in our source of truth. Plus, we get some other information such as manufacturer, host name, last seen, and so on. But you know that we also gather other information in Slurp'it from our devices such as IPAM, interfaces, prefixes, and even more things like VRF and VLANs. And want to find a way to actually push this information to Nautobot as well so we can actually collect them in our source of truth. So first we have to configure this feature from Slurp'it. I will go to Slurp'it, and if you go to settings, go to the plugin tab, you will set this up and you put the authorization type to Nautobot. Status is enabled, and we can also test the connectivity. We get 200. And basically these are going to be the things that you want to sync with Nautobot. You want to sync in the devices, data tasks, which we already talked about, IPAM interfaces, and prefixes. So with interfaces, you have to have the interfaces planning enabled and actually run it. With prefix, you have to have this planning routing table, and IPAM is just a combination of both. Well, if I say I want to sync this information with Nautobot, that means with each basically trigger, every time we run a planning on our devices, there is going to be a trigger, and Slurp'it would put those data or the new data into a queue and pushes it over to Nautobot. So we don't have to do anything. We just have to configure it for the first time. Every time with each new job, there will be a trigger, there will be a queue, and Slurp'it would automatically push that job over to Nautobot. So here is from the Slurp'it side of things. Make sure to go to dashboard whenever you're testing it and run the interfaces planning and routing table planning. You can also run the other plannings as well. But I've already done that, so I want to go to Nautobot. I will go to here. First, go to onboard devices. Make sure that the devices are onboarded. If your devices are here under the new tab or even the migrate or conflict tab, then there is no way that we can track the changes. The devices have to be onboarded, and you can also go to devices here in Nautobot and see if they are properly onboarded or not. The devices, my devices, are onboarded. Now that means if I go to Reconcile, I have the IPAM interfaces and prefixes information received from Slurp'it. So basically that's it. From here, the workflow is very similar to onboarding a device. I have the option to accept the changes or decline the changes. So I am going to accept the changes. By the way, before I do that, let me show you something else. If I click on the specific IP address, there is going to be a difference and incoming change, basically a section here. This is the first time I'm importing this IPAM, and that's basically the incoming change. There is no difference because, again, this is the first time I'm importing this IPAM. If there is any change regarding this IPAM, if any of these values change in the future and I want to import that again, there is going to be a diff showing here. Since this is the first time, I don't have anything here. It's the same case with basically everything else here. I am going to accept. Let me accept. Now I can actually select all and accept one more time. I'm going to go to interfaces. And before I accept all, let me show you something. There is a description showing here which says by Slurp'it. So this is something that I talk about in the data mapping section. Basically, data mapping would allow you to name certain columns that are coming from Slurp'it and also going from Nautobot. And description is one of them. You can also define other parameters in data mapping. So these columns would have a predefined value or custom value based on what you need. So I'm going to accept these as well. Go to prefixes, accept these. So we've successfully basically reconciled or accepted all the changes from reconcile. Now that means if I go to, for example, IPAM, prefixes. Here are the prefixes that are imported, and there is this nice thing under utilization which shows you how many IP addresses you use inside the subnet. Since these are host addresses /32, 100% of that subnet is utilized. And same thing with basically anything else. It shows you how many percent of that subnet is actually used, how many available IP addresses are there. Now I'm going to go to IP addresses. These are the IP addresses that are imported. And lastly, I'm going to show you the interfaces. So with interfaces, I have to go to devices and scroll down, device components. Here we have an interfaces section, and it shows you the interfaces that you imported from Reconcile. Also, I see the description here by Slurp'it. Now, I'm going to show you data mapping, which is pretty simple to use. What I did was I went to Slurp'it to Nautobot because we were pushing the jobs from Slurp'it to Nautobot. And here we have, based on the Reconcile options, we have these number of tabs. So these are going to be the settings, the data mapping settings related to IPAM. And I have a bunch of things here, status, active, or anything else. You can change these. For example, with interfaces, there is a description here. Also, there was a description regarding IPAM. And by Slurp'it is what I chose, prefixes by Slurp'it. So basically, every time I want to receive the information from a Slurp'it, there is going to be a predefined description value attached to it. If you want to change that to something else, maybe by Slurp'it, haha, then if you save that, then the changes won't automatically get reflected. You have to go here in Slurp'it, run the planning one more time. So Slurp'it pushes the data, and at the time of pushing, it will update the table for you. So this is all I wanted to cover. I will see you in the next one.